Today, I want to share with you the things that SAP does not want you to know about the S/4HANA 2027 deadline. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And one of the things that SAP doesn't necessarily want you to know about the deadline to replace ECC or R3 with S/4HANA by 2027 is that you don't have to do it. And you might feel pressure to do it. You might be hearing in the marketplace that you need to do it. But what I want to do today is talk about what exactly the 2027 deadline means and what you can do about it to navigate it in a way that makes the most sense for your organization. Now, if you'd like to learn more about how to make your S/4HANA implementation successful, and if you'd like to learn from some of the lessons our team has from having helped so many organizations through their S/4HANA implementations, I encourage you to read our Guide to Successful S/4HANA Implementations. It's a tech-agnostic, independent, objective summary of some of the lessons we have from having helped so many organizations through their S/4HANA implementations in recent years. You can read that guide by scanning the QR code right here, or you can go to the links below. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent, technology-agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation, and you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey. Now let's jump back into today's content. So let's start by talking about what exactly the 2027 deadline is and what it means to you. Essentially, what SAP has done is they've said that ECC and R3 customers, which are the two legacy SAP systems, they have until 2027 to move off of their old on-premise systems onto S/4HANA. And for some even older versions of those technologies, the cutoff date is actually 2025 if you're using a really old version of ECC or R3. But the point is that SAP has said that they're going to stop supporting ECC and R3 as of 2027. And to add to this, the other factor that comes into play is that SAP has already decided that most of their R&D, especially as it relates to artificial intelligence and some of the other emerging technologies, is being solely invested in S/4HANA, and those same capabilities are not going to become available for ECC and R3 customers. Now, on one hand, I understand what SAP is doing. They have to move off their old system. They have to stop supporting the old technologies at some point. So they have to draw a line in the sand at some point. But the problem I see here is that organizations that use SAP are very large organizations. Many of them are very complex. Many of them are risk adverse. And many of them have built customized solutions using older SAP technologies that's just going to take a long time to untangle and move to the new system. Now, personally, I question whether or not SAP will actually stick to this 2027 deadline. That's my personal opinion. However, when I talk to many people in the SAP community, including heads of user groups within the SAP community and people that work at system integrators and people that work directly for SAP as well, I hear the same refrain, which is SAP is not going to back off that deadline. Now, the reason I struggle to believe this is because so many large organizations are using old versions of SAP. And to force a Fortune 100 or Fortune 100 global organization onto a new system when they're not ready seems like poor business practice, and it seems like something that might back off of eventually, but there's no certainty around that by any means. So what I want to do next is talk about what does this 2027 deadline mean to you, and more importantly, what can you do to navigate this in a way that makes sense to you, especially if you're in a position where you don't think you can realistically be off of an old legacy version of SAP by their deadline of 2027. The first thing to consider is that there's an easy way to extend maintenance and support beyond 2027, and that is to look at third-party maintenance and support. There are a number of different third-party providers out there that provide just as good maintenance and support for R3 and ECC as SAP does, and in many cases, it's significantly cheaper to offer that support. And the good news with third-party support is that they're not incentivized to try and sell you new software. They're incentivized to try to help you maintain older versions of the software. So if you're in a position where you don't think or you're not sure if you can move off of VCC or R3 by 2027, one thing you might want to consider is let's look at third-party maintenance and support providers to see how they might extend our horizon, extend our runway to complete a potential migration to S/4HANA. That way you can operate at your own tempo. You're not under extreme pressure to make a change when it might be a bit premature or it might expose your operations to risk. Now, I've included a link below of a potential third-party support provider if you want to learn more about it. So just click the link below in the description field. I've included some information about a potential third-party support provider that is unaffiliated with Third Stage Consulting, but it's a third-party provider that might be able to help you extend the runway. But regardless of what you do, at least consider the fact that you don't have to rely just on SAP directly to get the support and minutes you need to continue using these legacy systems into the future if you need to. Now, to consider this looming deadline of 2027, it gives you some time to think about the answer to this question, which is, do you really want to be doubling down and going all in on SAP? Now, I'm not here to suggest that you should not move to S/4HANA. I'm not here to suggest that you should stick with your old legacy systems for eternity. But what I am saying is it's a good time to rethink your dependency on SAP, especially if you're in a position now where you're using so much SAP technology that now you're being forced to move quickly at SAP's pace rather than your own pace. It does beg the question of, do we want to be considering other options? One thing that's changed significantly in the last decade or 2 decades with SAP is that SAP is no longer a single integrated solution. You have multiple solutions to fill out the gaps of what S/4HANA can and can't do. For example, you have Ariba on the procurement side of things, you have SuccessFactors on the human capital management side of things, you have Concur on time and expense reporting. So SAP is already somewhat of a best-of-breed environment as it is, even if you're buying solely from SAP. So it's a good opportunity for you to ask yourselves, are there other solutions that we could be using to augment SAP so we're not so dependent on one single vendor? And what you might be experiencing right now is there is a risk to being solely dependent on a single vendor, in that now you're being forced to have this discussion of how do we move all of our systems and all of our data out of our old system into a new system by 2027. So one thing to consider is SAP the only answer for your solution, or are there other solutions that might augment SAP and provide a more complete and more strategic solution for you? And I'm going to come back to this point later in this video to talk about how you can create a roadmap that makes the most sense for you. So be sure to stick around until the end of this video. If you grew up in the 80s like I did, you might remember a song called "It's the End of the World as We Know It" by REM. And in some cases, I feel like ERP vendors such as SAP are trying to create a scenario where you feel like it's the end of the world. In other words, you have to move off of your old system or else the earth is going to crash and the world's going to end and you just won't be able to function your business. And that's not true. And so what we have to do is recognize what the stakes are here and also think about what's the worst that would happen if you stopped getting support in 2027. Now, I've already shared with you one solution, which is to look at third-party maintenance. I shared that point earlier in this video about how you can extend your maintenance by looking to third-party support providers. Well, even if you don't do that, you could ask yourself, could we maintain the system for a certain amount of time ourselves internally with our internal IT staff? And does that give us enough runway and reduce our risk shorter term and longer term as well? And the reason I bring this up is because for some organizations, making a shift prematurely to an entirely new system could actually be the end of the world rather than losing support and maintenance on a system. So you have to look at what are the risks and rewards of both scenarios, what's the cost benefit of both scenarios. For some organizations, if you have other competing priorities or you don't have the budget or resources, or if you're concerned about operational disruption and disrupting your current operations, it may be that you want extra time to implement SAP, and maybe it takes you until 2028 or 2029. And so you ask yourself, well, if I wait an extra year or two, or I go a year or two without SAP support, is that the end of the world? For most organizations, I would say no. Now, it's not ideal, but it's probably not the end of the world. And so I think the key here is to put things in perspective, to not think too emotionally about this and think objectively about the fact that there are ways for you to continue operating in your legacy environment while you're implementing your new solution, or even if you need to buy yourself more time than just a year or two, there's ways you can do that. So this all begs the question of what do we do? How do we define a roadmap that makes the most sense for us? And that's the key here, is wherever you are in your journey right now, and wherever you think you're going to end up, whether it's cutting over by 2027 or not, you want to define a roadmap independently and objectively that makes the most sense for your organization. So in other words, you don't want to necessarily just go into a project and say, we're going to start today and we're going to be live by the end of 2027 because SAP told us we have to. What you need to do is say, instead, this is how long we think it'll realistically and objectively take us to implement S/4HANA or whatever our new solution might be. And if it happens to fall before 2027, great. But if it takes you into 2028, 29, or whenever it is, again, it's not the end of the world, and you just want to go in with your definition of what the roadmap is going to be. And you want to do that in an objective way, free of vendor bias and vendor pressure. Now, if you talk to SAP or you talk to one of SAP system integrators, of course, they're going to tell you you need to do this by 2027. There is no other option. But you do have other options, and that's the key here that you have to recognize. Now, if you're looking for more advice on how to plan for your implementation, I encourage you to watch this video right here on my YouTube channel that talks about Phase 0. It's the whole implementation planning process, and they talk about how whether you're implementing S/4HANA or any other solution, talks about how you can plan for that and create a roadmap that makes the most sense for your organization. So check out that video. It'll give you some guidance on how to do that. So I hope this has provided you some guidance and some confidence and comfort in knowing that it's not the end of the world. You don't have to be off SAP's products by 2027, and you need to do what's right for your organization and do what's right in terms of ROI, risk management, and everything else you have to do as a business leader. If you'd like to learn more about how to make your S/4HANA implementation successful, and if you're looking for that independent tech-agnostic view of the world, which is what we provide at our company at Third Stage Consulting, I encourage you to read our guide to successful S/4HANA implementations. We've helped quite a few organizations in the recent years make that jump from ECC or R3 over to S/4HANA, and that guide is intended to share some of our lessons and battle wounds from those transitions. And of course, if you'd like to learn more about how we might be able to help your organization through your SAP transition from a tech agnostic and independent perspective, please feel free to reach out to me. I've included my contact information below. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day. Now, as you consider this deadline, let me say that again. And in both cases, I think I'm pointing the wrong way, am I? Now, if you look at, if you'd like, and that's it. I've got nothing. I got nothing else.